Welcome in. If you're the kind of person who loves a compelling, nuanced narrative,
Oh, the kind that really gets right under your skin.
exactly, the kind of story that just refuses to leave your head after you put it down, if that is you, then you are in exactly the right place today.
You really are.
Our mission for this deep dive is to step into the incredibly atmospheric, honestly pretty heavy prologue of Phan Nasman's psychological thriller, Behind a Smile.
It is heavy.
It really is. We've got a sneak peek of the opening chapters here, and, well, the imagery in just these first few pages is staggering.
Yeah, it completely caught me off guard.
Right. So we are going to slow right down today. We're going to unpack that suffocating suspense and really dissect the psychological weight of what the author is doing to his protagonist and, by extension, what he's doing to us as readers.
Because it is a very, very deliberate piece of writing. It's potent.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll be looking closely at how Nasman builds this world. He manages to establish this incredibly complex protagonist and a deeply unsettling threat, all while, and this is the brilliant part, constantly blurring the line between what is physically happening in the real world and what might just be psychologically manifesting in the character's mind.
Which makes it so unnerving to read.
It demands a close read. We really have to question the reality of every single thing we are being shown.
Let's start right at the environment then, because the setting subverts your expectations almost instantly.
It does.
We are in San Jose. Now, normally you picture California in a story and you think of, I don't know, sunshine.
Palm trees, beaches.
Yeah, maybe a bit of that noir-style heat baking the pavement. But Nasman opens by plunging us into something entirely hostile.
Hostile is the perfect word for it.
He writes, let me find the exact quote here. The air in San Jose doesn't just get cold in the winter, it turns sharp, like a blade left out in the frost.
That line. Just wow.
Right, like a blade left out in the frost. That phrasing completely shifts your expectation.
It does. It immediately makes you wonder what kind of world this character is waking up to every single day.
Because the weather itself feels weaponized.
It's a phenomenal opening image.
Yeah.
And it does so much more than just tell us to, put on a coat.
Oh, definitely.
If you look at how he constructs that metaphor, that blade does double duty. Yes, it establishes the bitter, biting winter of the physical setting. But the narrative quickly transitions that environmental detail into a profound psychological baseline for our protagonist.
For Thu.
Exactly, for Thu. We learned very early on that for her, that blade was always pressed against her throat.
I got chills when I read that part.
So the environmental hostility isn't just weather. It's a mirror of her internal existence. She is living in a constant, unyielding state of threat, day in and day out.
And that state of threat is exactly what makes her character introduction so fascinating to me.
It's so layered.
It really is. We get these physical and emotional descriptions of Thu that are just full of these brilliant, agonizing contradictions.
Yeah, like the part where she's described as a girl built of grief and good intentions.
Yes, built of grief and good intentions. But then we get this highly specific image. She is a 4'11" pillar of strength holding up a house made of cards.
That is such a striking visual.
I actually had to pause when I read that because think about it. A pillar of strength is such a massive cliche in literature.
You usually picture marble or stone.
Exactly, something holding up a massive temple. But here, she is 4'11" and she's holding up playing cards.
It is a beautifully fragile paradox, and I think it speaks to the sheer, exhausting effort of her daily life.
Oh, the mental toll must be incredible.
Being a 4'11" pillar of strength highlights her diminutive physical stature against the massive structural weight she's being forced to carry.
And think about the nature of a house of cards, too.
It requires a perfectly still environment to remain standing.
Yes, it requires absolute concentration, held breath, steady hands. The slightest breeze will bring the whole thing crashing down.
And her foundation, as we're told, is built entirely of grief and good intentions.
Which is an incredibly unstable foundation for a human being to operate from.
It's completely unsustainable.
So for you listening, think about the sheer concentration required to keep a literal house of cards standing on a table. Now imagine doing that while your actual life is actively falling apart around you.
Because the narrative definitely does not shy away from what is actually causing that grief.
No, it doesn't. This isn't just some vague, abstract literary sadness. We are given the grounded reality of her dual struggle, and it's a ledger of absolute despair.
It's brutal.
She is fighting to make rent. She is fighting the ticking clock of a dream deferred.
And most heartbreakingly, she is fighting her father's terminal illness.
The cancer that is actively eating his chest. There is this raw, visceral detail about what was it, the white-hot stress of watching her father cough up his life in red-stained tissues.
That image is so hard to read.
It really grounds this thriller in a tragedy that is so human and universally terrifying. You don't need a monster in the closet when you have red-stained tissues on the nightstand.
It completely anchors the story in an agonizing reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to highlight that phrase you just brought up, actually, white-hot stress.
Yeah, that stood out to me too.
The contrast there is so striking. Coldness is used to describe the external world, the frost, the winter blade we talked about.
Yeah.
But her internal world, her psychological state is burning up.
It's white hot.
Right. And from a psychological perspective, this level of sustained trauma watching a parent slowly deteriorate while desperately trying to keep a roof over your head, it pushes the human nervous system to its absolute limits.
I can't even imagine.
It causes caregiver burnout, hyperarousal, basically a state where your brain is continuously flooded with cortisol.
Just constantly in fight or flight mode.
Exactly. And Nasman uses this hyper-stressed reality to set up the central ambiguity of the entire prologue. Because when the mind is under that much white-hot stress, its ability to reliably perceive reality begins to fracture.
It starts playing tricks on you.
It does.
So we have this woman pushed to the absolute psychological brink by her father's illness and her poverty. She is already standing on a house of cards. What is the breeze that finally knocks it over?
That's the terrifying part.
You usually expect the inciting incident in a thriller to be something massive, a murder, a kidnapping, someone breaking down a door.
A bomb going off.
Right. But the catalyst here is described simply as an angel's errand.
An angel's errand.
It is just a simple act of reaching into the dark to find a lost keychain. That is it. A totally mundane favor. And yet, that is the exact moment everything fractures.
It really emphasizes the tragedy of those good intentions she is built upon.
Yeah, it really does.
An angel's errand implies an act of purity, right? A selfless favor for someone else. But in the world Nasman has created, good deeds do not go unpunished.
No, they are a liability.
The narrative tells us that this simple act invited a monster into her orbit.
Ugh, that phrase.
It is a chilling exploration of the randomness of victimization. She didn't make a reckless, dangerous mistake. She wasn't walking down a dark alley looking for trouble.
She reached into the dark to help find a keychain.
But in doing so, her hand crossed a threshold, unwittingly drawing the attention of something predatory.
Invited a monster into her orbit. That phrase alone is terrifying because it implies gravity.
Ooh, yes, gravity.
Once something is in your orbit, it is circling you. It is pulling on you. There's an inevitability to it.
You're trapped in its gravitational pull.
And the way this antagonist is introduced is so subtle. He doesn't just step out under a streetlight with a knife.
No, it's much creepier than that.
It starts with a shadow. And then it becomes the shadow of a shadow.
The shadow of a shadow.
For you listening, trying to piece together the reality of this text along with us, think about how elusive that is. A shadow is already something you can't touch. It is just an absence of light. But a shadow of a shadow that feels untethered from physical reality entirely. It feels supernatural. Or like you said earlier, entirely psychological.
See, I actually look at it a slightly different way, and I think this is the exact trap the author sets for the reader.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, is he real, or is he a phantom conjured by that white-hot stress we discussed?
The hyperarousal.
Exactly. The narrative introduces this presence at a place called the Cactus Lounge. The author describes him as a silhouette at the gate that didn't just watch, but wanted.
Wanted. That's a strong word.
It implies a predatory hunger. He is called a jagged echo of a man. Now, it is tempting to write it off as just her imagination, a product of a collapsing psyche. All the descriptors, shadow, silhouette, echo, they are derivative. They lack physical substance.
See, I was leaning fully into the psychological interpretation there, especially with the phrase jagged echo.
Because it sounds like trauma echoing back at her.
Exactly. It sounds like her own internal pain projecting outward. But then, and this is where Nasman is so clever, you have to reconcile that with her physical reaction to him.
The physiological response.
Right. The narrative explicitly says this presence made the hair on her arms stand like needles.
Like needles.
Her body is reacting to a physical threat. That primal evolutionary warning system we all have is going off, but then the nightmare logic kicks in immediately.
Because every time she looks,
he is a step closer, and every time she blinks, he is gone.
it's pure nightmare fuel.
You try to look at the threat and it moves, you blink, and it vanishes entirely. That doesn't happen with a real person.
And that primal reaction is precisely why this is such an effective psychological thriller. Panic attacks and severe anxiety, which Thuy is undoubtedly primed for, given her father's health, can cause identical physiological responses.
Really? Even the hair standing up?
Oh, absolutely. Your hair stands up, your heart races, you break out in a cold sweat, all without a literal physical predator in the room. Your brain thinks you're about to be eaten by a tiger, even if you're just standing in your kitchen.
Wow.
Which brings us to a really profound statement in the text. The mind is a cruel playground.
A cruel playground.
If her mind is a cruel playground, her own brain might be weaponizing her grief and her exhaustion against her.
So the stalker is her own mind.
The stalker dynamic, stepping closer when looked at, vanishing in a blink, is terrifying if it is a flesh and blood man. But it is arguably even more horrifying if it is a manifestation of her own mind breaking down.
Because you can't outrun your own mind.
Exactly. The monster might just be the sheer, suffocating weight of her father's impending death taking a human shape in her peripheral vision.
That is such an overwhelming thought, the idea that you are being hunted by your own trauma, that you literally cannot trust the signals your own eyes are sending you.
It's the ultimate loss of control.
And to heighten that tension, Nasman contrasts this gritty, predatory threat at the Cactus Lounge with an entirely different location.
Willow Glen.
Willow Glen. The narrative tells us that Thu's mind desperately tries to convince her she is safe there. We are introduced to the Davis family who live in Willow Glen. They are described as her secondary parents and her sanctuary.
The sanctuary from the blade and the frost.
Yes. It paints this picture of idyllic suburban safety. For you listening, you know the kind of neighborhood. You picture manicured lawns, beautiful houses, iron gates.
A place where you are finally supposed to be able to drop your shoulders and just breathe.
Exactly, a fortress of normality.
Willow Glen represents the illusion of sanctuary. In literature, and frankly in life too, wealth and beautiful homes are very often used as symbols of insulation against the harshness of the world.
Money buys a sense of security.
Right. Thea wants to believe that the winter blade pressed against her throat back in San Jose cannot reach her in the manicured safety of Willow Glen. She desperately wants to believe the Davis family can act as a shield between her and the darkness.
But the author expertly shatters that illusion of geographic safety almost as soon as he introduces it.
He really does. He pulls the rug right out from under the reader.
With this absolute gut punch of a line, he writes, "But shadows don't stop at the gates of beautiful houses.
It gives me goosebumps every time.
It completely levels the playing field. It doesn't matter how nice the neighborhood is. It doesn't matter how much you love your secondary parents.
If the shadow is a real physical stalker, a wrought iron gate isn't going to stop someone who is truly fixated.
And if the shadow is a manifestation of her grief over her father's cancer, well, you definitely can't lock grief out of a house.
No, you cannot.
It follows you into the nicest rooms. It sits with you on the expensive furniture.
Exactly. The encroaching threat is entirely boundaryless. Geographic cures just don't work for internal haunting.
That's a great way to put it.
And this realization leads us to a moment of escalating tension in the text, where it says the ultimate cruelty hits home.
The ultimate cruelty.
The narrative gets incredibly ambiguous here, intentionally leaving us in this state of suspended dread, it asks. Or was it an accident? Was it just the cruel, indifferent hand of fate?
We aren't told exactly what this ultimate cruelty is yet.
No, we aren't. Has the stalker finally struck? Has he done something to the Davis family?
Or has her father's illness reached its sudden, inevitable conclusion?
We don't know. What we do know for certain is that the environment of perfect stillness required to maintain her life has been shattered.
The House of Cards has finally collapsed.
It's down.
The House of Cards is down, and that 4'11" pillar of strength is buckling. Because as we reach the climax of this prologue, the escalation is just terrifying.
The pacing speeds right up.
The distance is completely gone. Nasman writes, "The shadow is behind her now. There is no more watching from the gate of the Cactus Lounge. The threat is immediate and breathing right down her neck."
He's right there.
The text says she doesn't need to turn around to feel him. He is the roar of the lion. He is the ultimatum she cannot escape.
Think about that trajectory.
It's wild. We've gone from a shadow to a jagged echo to the deafening, predatory roar of a lion.
That progression is an absolute masterclass in pacing suspense. We move from silence and imperceptibility to an overwhelming sensory assault.
And the use of the word ultimatum is particularly striking to me.
Because an ultimatum isn't just a threat.
Right. It forces a choice. It demands a response. You can't ignore an ultimatum.
And the narrative explicitly states the stakes of this ultimatum. To stay is to be consumed.
To stay is to be consumed.
You can no longer freeze in the face of this threat. The time for endurance, for just being a static pillar holding up a fragile life, is officially over. Action is now a matter of literal survival.
It's such a grim warning, and it perfectly sets the stakes for the rest of the book. It means she has to move, she has to act. But where does she go?
That is the big question.
That's what makes this such a brilliant setup. Nasman has painted her into a corner where her tangible reality is filled with grief and terminal illness, and her periphery is filled with a predatory shadow.
There is no safe direction to step. When you synthesize all these elements, the brilliance of Nasman's prologue really comes into sharp focus. The shadow comes to embody absolutely everything Thuy is fighting.
Every single pressure.
Whether it is a literal, physical stalker drawn to her by that innocent angel's errand, or the suffocating personified weight of her father's impending death, the psychological effect on her is exactly the same.
It breaks her down, all the same.
The shadow is the manifestation of her breaking point. It is the physical and emotional toll of the blade that has been pressed against her throat since the very first sentence, finally breaking the skin.
Man, it brings everything full circle so beautifully.
It really does.
The winter blade, the house of cards, the red-stained tissues, the jagged echo of a man. It is an incredible study in building a heavy, suffocating atmosphere.
And it leaves us right on the precipice.
It really does. Nasman closes this prologue by framing the true emotional conflict of this story. It is not just a simple cat-and-mouse game about escaping a stalker.
No, it's much deeper than that.
He writes, in the end, the question isn't whether the shadow will leave her alone. The question is, when you are haunted by the shadow's shadow, is there any light left to run to?
That is a phenomenal closing question. It forces the reader to really reckon with the potential total eclipse of our hope.
Because a shadow implies there's still light somewhere, right?
Exactly. A shadow implies a temporary obstruction of a light source, but a shadow's shadow. That implies a darkness so profound, so layered, that the original light source is entirely forgotten.
It's just darkness all the way down.
It suggests that even if she physically survives this immediate threat, even if she somehow escapes the lion roaring behind her, the psychological haunting might be permanent.
How do you recover from a trauma that has seeped so deeply into your perception of reality?
I don't know if you do.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day today. Think back to how Thuy was described at the very beginning of this deep dive.
A girl built of grief and good intentions.
Exactly. If this shadow of a shadow is truly a manifestation of her unbearable reality, does surviving this monster mean she must ultimately let go of her good intentions?
Oh, that's a tough question.
To finally find that light, will she have to stop being the pillar of strength for everyone else? Will she have to let the house of cards fall? And perhaps even make the agonizing choice to emotionally let go of her father just to save herself?
To save herself, she has to let him go.
It is a haunting dilemma. And it's exactly the kind of complex psychological knot that guarantees you will want to devour the rest of this book to find out how she untangles it.
You won't be able to put it down.
I know I won't. We want to thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the opening pages of Phan Nasman's Behind a Smile.
It is a great discussion.
It has been an absolute thrill to dissect this world with you, and it really goes to show the immense value of slowing down and reading between the lines of a truly great thriller.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your instincts, and whatever you do, don't let the shadows get too close. Take care.